Welcome, welcome, welcome to Kitchen Table Creativity. I'm Donna Leffler, and today I have another fun project, a summery, beautiful popsicle image. And we are going to paint this in watercolor. We are going to have a lot of fun with this today because just looking at it, it's making me feel cooler. It's blazing hot here where I live in Idaho, and I'm just in the mood for something light and beautiful and summery. So let me run through my supplies very quickly. I always like to go left to right. First of all, I have a little scrap of watercolor paper, which is similar to the one that I'm painting on, and a paper towel. And so this I use if I want to test out my paints before I put them on my actual painting. And then to blot your brush, to clean your brush, it's always good to have a rag or some paper towels on hand. I have a bottle of water, just plain water, that I like to spray my paints with to prepare them. I have a stylus, and the stylus is to trace the image. And I really like to trace my images before I paint them. I just find it a lot easier. And the way I do that is I print out the image, I turn it into this, which you can get in the description of this video just by clicking on more. It will drop down and there's a link where you can open up a PDF and print this if you'd like. And so this is really easy to trace. It's just like a coloring book paper, and sometimes I give these to my grandkids to color after I'm done with them. And so then you take a piece of graphite paper, put it face down, trace around the basics. I don't usually trace every single little thing that's on there. You can add details later. And so it looks something like this. Okay, so no shame in tracing. In fact, when you're a beginner, I think it's really good to trace because you can have a lot more time to not worry about sketching and drawing, but just to get straight to the painting. Now, the paints that I'm going to use here are the summer palette that I've come up with. And it's a part of my Heart and Home palette. I've been using these Daniel Smith paints now for everything, and I really love them. Now, if you don't have these paints, just use something similar that you have in your set. And if you don't have the exact colors, you can always try to mix them also. So what I'm using today is actually these 5 colors. I always like to use 5. I have this coral, the yellow, the beautiful turquoise, the purple, and the sap green. And so I've been actually working on a bunch of different paintings, but I'm in the process of working on a collection of summer paintings. So if you follow along with me, you can paint this collection too. And I'm going to frame mine. I've started already with the sandcastle from last week. So if you didn't see that, you could find that at my channel at Mind Your Heart Studio. And they all are going to be kind of matching. And so it's the first time that I've really done a full collection like this that I'm going to frame and hang in my home. So if you would like to do that, I'm using an 8x8 piece of watercolor paper. Really any kind of watercolor paper will do, but I'm using 8x8 because the frames that I got from Amazon are 12x12, and then they have a mat inside, which is white, and then it's cut to 8x8. And so this fits kind of perfectly in there. So I have my new ceramic palette, which I really love, and I got this from Etsy. I think it is handmade. It has my studio name, Mind Your Heart Studio, on it, and I just think it's fun. Really inspires me. I've got my 3 jars of clean water here, one to rinse the very dirty brushes, the next to rinse it a little more, and the third to make sure it's really super clean. And I like to have extra water on hand so I don't have to keep getting up. And the water is, it's just good to have your brushes really clean before you switch colors. All right, so then I have, for finishing touches, I have my Sharpie paint pen in medium. I just ordered a fine tip, so I'm going to see how that works in comparison to this is a medium tip. Any white pen or paint will do. And then I have 2 micron permanent black pens, a 05 and a 005, and those I'm going to use for the fine detail work when I'm done painting. The last thing I have is my brushes. I'm going to use a size 4 and a size 2. These are both round tip brushes. But any kind of round tip brush will work as long as it's not really big, because there is more little detail work that you probably are going to want a smaller brush. So use whatever you have on hand. I always say use whatever you have on hand at least to start, and then see if you need to get any other supplies. Now, I want to thank everybody that has subscribed to my channel so far. You know, I'm a brand new channel, really a new teacher to watercolor. I've taught a lot of things throughout the years, but watercolor is something that has been on my heart for a long time, to learn how to paint in watercolor. And so thank you for those who have subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed, that would help me a great deal if you'd click the subscribe button. And that way you'll be notified when I post new tutorials, which is my goal is once a week to do that. All right, so to start out with, I'm going to start with the yellow because I always like to start with the lightest color. And I'm just going to spray my paints over here away from my paper because I don't want to get my paper wet. So I recommend you go ahead, spray some water on your paints, get them all so that they're ready to use. And I'm just going to kind of move these other ones out of the way. And I am going to start with the sun. And this yellow is very, very yellow. So I'm going to start out, let's see, I think I'm going to start out with my bigger brush, even though the sun is not, it's kind of small, but the really great thing about round tip brushes is you can just use the very fine tip of it if you have detail work, and it works just great. Okay, so I'm just going to do a bright yellow, just kind of solid looking sun for right now. Now the other thing is we have the popsicle sticks, we have the centers of the flowers, and then we have the ground space below, which kind of looks like sand. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay with this very light, and I can always add layers later to this. It's always good to start with the lightest color. And I'm just going to do that for the centers, but I do want the popsicle sticks to look a little bit brownish, and I want it to look more like sand that these are kind of propped up on, I guess. I don't know, I have beach in my mind. I have beach visions of being at the water. So I'm going to rinse my brush really well. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to take a tiny bit of this coral color, this beautiful coral red, and I'm going to put just a touch of that into my yellow. And this would be a time when it would be good to kind of test out your colors. And this looks a little bit orangey to me. So a way that I can make this kind of brown is to take the violet and again, rinse my brush because I don't like to carry over different colors. And I'm going to take just a tiny bit because this violet that I have is very dark. And I'm going to add just a tiny bit of that. And I have a feeling this will look more like what I'm aiming for. Yeah. All right, so I just need a little bit of this. And I'm going to start with the sticks. And I have kind of a lot of water on here, so I'm going to blot my brush, dry my brush off a little bit, and just lift a tiny bit of this off. And again, I can always go back and add more layers. And the last thing I'm going to do is take this same color and water it way, way down. So it's very, very thin. And that I usually kind of do this last, but today I don't really want to have to come back to make this color again. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this ground, this sand, this earth that the popsicles are propped up on. All right, and then I'm going to take just a little bit of this orangey color that I have left, and I'm going to add a little bit of it to the sun. And I just want this to be very subtle because I don't want the sun to be just like totally solid. And I just think this adds kind of a little bit of interest to make it a little bit of orange. And I'm also going to add a little bit more of that to the sticks. Because I want those to look different than the ground. A little bit darker. All right, I like the way that turned out, and I think what I'll do, as long as I have this here, I'm going to add a little bit more of this violet, and I want to make a color that is going to look a little bit more like a shadow. So again, I want it very light. And what I'm going to do with that, and make it very, very watery. I'm just going to put a little bit of this where the sticks are. All right, and then rinse my brush really well again. And the next thing I'm going to do is go back to this yellow. And this time, I'm going to mix a lime green. So rinse really well again. And I'm going to put some of this green here. And I really just want a very little, again, very little bit of green. Because I want this to be a nice lime color for the popsicle. I think that's beautiful. Okay, so we're going to start with the middle popsicle, and we're just going to cover the whole thing with this lime green. Just paint the whole entire thing. And these lines that are in the middle, these popsicles, you know, they're like the little indents. You don't really have to draw those if you don't want to. You could always just kind of paint those in a little bit darker, because we are going to add a darker color to that to make it look like it's indented. All right, so now I'm going to take just a little bit of green, and I'm really wanting to test these because I want to make sure that it's not too dark. It's the right consistency. And I'm just going to put this darker green where those indented areas are. Such a little bit of paint goes a long way with watercolor. It's pretty incredible. So I found, as I'm doing my art, a lot of memories of things are coming back to me, and a lot of things when I was young, when I was a child, and maybe that's because I used to do a lot of art when I was young. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm just going to take a little bit more of this green, keep it pretty watered down, and I think for this I'm actually going to switch to my other brush, a little bit smaller brush. And I'm going to use this for the leaves. So for some reason, as I've been painting, I've been thinking a lot about, oh gosh, where I grew up in Michigan, doing art as a child, loving art. And I think because it's summertime, you know, we loved the summer in Michigan because it was so cold during the winter and the fall, and that we really, I mean, we did go out and do ice skating and stuff like that, but it was just bitter cold so often. So when the summer came, it was just so wonderful and so carefree. And so those are kind of the thoughts and images that have been coming to me as I'm working on these summery paintings. And I think that's what kind of even gave me the inspiration to paint these summery images. And I think I'm going to need a little more green here. Kind of running out. These Daniel Smith Colors paints are very, very pigmented, so they have a lot of color in them. Don't need very much. Now, when it comes to painting too, I always say less is more. Make it lighter than you think, less water than you think, and for me, that's kind of key in what's been working. So in the summer, we used to play outside, and we would just be gone all day long. You know, we would listen for our mom to call our name, and that meant lunchtime or dinner time. And I just remember riding our bikes and just having such a good time, always outside playing. And so for this ice cream, these popsicles, I just think popsicles are fun anyway. But what was kind of coming to me was the idea of the good humor man. And I had to look up to see if it was a real thing, because we used to just call him the good humor man or the ice cream man. And this truck would come around and a bell would ring on the truck. And when we heard that bell far off, we would race home, we would race inside, and we would beg our mom, was probably like for 10 cents, to get some ice cream. And most of the time the answer was no. But every now and then she would give us the money and we would be able to get ice cream. So I had to kind of look it up to see if that good humor was really a thing, and it is a thing. And there are not trucks anymore that go around in neighborhoods that are good humor trucks. I think there's other kinds of ice cream trucks. But they still supposedly sell the ice cream in the grocery store, so I'll have to kind of look for it. I just remember a lot of it was these kind of popsicles that we would get, probably because they were less expensive. So I'm going to add just a touch of darker green to these leaves. I like to do that, make them stand out a little more. Okay, and I think that does it for the green, and now I would like to move on to the red. So I'm rinsing my brush really well, and this is not a true red, this is a coral red. It's Daniel Smith paint, and let me see the color. It's called quinacridone coral. I think it's pronounced quinacridone. I don't really know. I'm gonna have to someday kind of do some research on the paints and see why they are the names they are. I find that kind of thing kind of interesting. Okay, so I'm back to the bigger brush, and I'm just gonna do a kind of a wash of this color. This is a very intense, vivid color, and it reminds me of watermelon or strawberries. Reminds me of summer. I'm really excited about completing all 6 of these summery images, and I started with shells, and that's one of my tutorials, which you can find, and that's not really meant to be in the collection. I was kind of just testing out the palette, the summer palette, and I really liked it. So I just decided to continue, keep it simple, see what I could do with those colors. Okay. And then again, I'm going to take just a little bit more of that darker paint and paint these center area. So we have a beach trip planned to Newport Beach at the end of August, and I'm really excited about that. I actually bought these little travel watercolor kits, and I was thinking of giving them to my son's significant others, the girls, who will be coming on the trip with us. They're just really beautiful girls, and they are so creative and artistic. But now I'm kind of looking at them, and I'm not sure if they're going to fit in my suitcase. So I might have to wait until Christmas. We'll see if I can. I'm going to try to travel really light this time, because I always bring way too much stuff. Last year, we go pretty much every year to Newport Beach. And last year, I don't know what I was thinking, but I brought so many clothes, and some of them were like warmer things that I thought I would wear, and I didn't. It was pretty warm at the beach, and I ended up bringing them all home. So this year, I have some new suitcases I'm getting, and I'm going to be very careful about not bringing too much. So we'll see if I can fit those watercolor painting kits. They're really tiny, but they're in kind of a big box. So I'm thinking maybe I can remove them from the box. We'll see. All right. Now we also have the flower. So I think I'm going to switch to my other brush again to do more of this detail work. So I got this new overhead camera, and I was talking about it in my last video. And I felt like the sandcastle that I painted, it just was not as clear, I don't think, as my phone camera. And so I did a little bit of research. I looked up information on the cameras, and it turns out my phone camera, it's an Android, but that it's like one of the top-rated cameras for filming. So I am going back to painting with my phone because I think it came out better. So interesting technology, the way it's advancing and changing. So yeah, I'm just painting these little hearts now. So as you're painting, I invite you to just kind of think about, what does this remind you of? Did you have the Good Humor Man come around your neighborhood when you were young? Depending on your age. I think it said in the article I read that they discontinued in 1976. So that was like, I guess, quite a long time ago. Okay, so now I'm kind of just taking a step back here, and I think that I'm pretty much done with the pink, or the coral. Okay, so next we have the blue. And this blue, I was really kind of not sure if I was going to like this blue, but I'm turning out to really love this blue. This is actually one of the colors in our wedding. We got married. The girls' dresses were this color, and to this day, I love it. So again, to water it down quite a bit, I'm not going to start with it very dark. Test it out. I think that'll work. Same thing, filling in the entire popsicle. So let me know in the comments what painting this or watching the tutorial even, what kind of memories maybe that it brought back for you. I haven't had a popsicle in a long time. I try not to eat a lot of sugar, but I think it's worth the indulgence for a little summer treat, especially when my grandkids are over. I have to get some popsicles. I really like the ones that are rainbow too. All right, so now I'm just going back in with a touch of darker. All right, and then the only other thing that is blue, the only other thing that's blue in this image are some little dots, and so I'm going to also paint those in a second. So I've been showing this little trick that I learned. I've been showing it in some of my tutorials. So I'm going to grab just a very tiny brush here. And what I'm going to do is just use the end of it, not the brush end, but the other end. And I'm going to put it right in the palette here of paint, the pan of paint. And I'm going to test it on here just to show you that I can make these nice little perfect dots. So just a few little fun little dots to add interest here. And so I'm going to put those now, as long as I have this blue out and ready. And you can add these or not, you know, it's kind of optional. Just kind of reminds me of confetti, just a little fun kind of embellishment, I guess. And these should just kind of be scattered around. Okay, I think that's good. And now the last thing that we have is the violet. So for the violet, like I said, I know that this is very, very dark. This is a paint that's probably going to last me literally forever because it's so pigmented. But another color that I really like. So whenever I'm working with these really pigmented colors, I try to water them down quite a bit and then just make sure that there's just a little bit on your brush. A little goes a long way. And I am back to using the smaller brush. So I hope that you're enjoying this tutorial. I am having so much fun with these summer images that I've created, and I have, I think, 4 more in the series, so watch for those. I'm not going to give away what they are yet. And if you haven't signed up yet, please sign up for my Creative Heart Journal. It's a free little mini book magazine thing that I send on Fridays at noon Mountain Time. So I send it on Fridays, and I create a new one every week. This is next week's tutorial because I'm a little bit ahead. And it's just a fun little pub. It's only 5 pages long. It's really easy to read. I just started creating it for my own inspiration, and then I thought, well, maybe this can inspire other people to paint on the weekend. And, you know, when I watch other people paint, it makes me want to paint. And when I first started painting watercolor, I don't know about you, but I had a hard time finding really like true beginner tutorials. Most of them seemed really, really difficult. And I know, like, probably if I just kept practicing, I could get it, but it's kind of frustrating. So my goal is to make things that anybody can paint, even children. And it's a start, you know, it's fun. I just love the whimsical style, and so I call it Scandinavian folk art. There's always the little hearts. That's why I named my studio Mind Your Heart Studio. And there's usually flowers. It's kind of like my signature style and marks. And I'm still working on it, still evolving. So I hope it makes you happy, makes me happy. And it would make me happy if it makes you happy. It's a very fun, forgiving style for beginners. And I'm just darkening up these purples. I really want this to be kind of vivid, these colors. So now, what I always say is that take a little step back and see, because we're pretty much done with the painting part of this project. And I did this last week, so I'm going to do it again. I kind of forgot to add some yellow, and my yellow is got a little bit of green in it somehow, so I'm going to wipe that off. I really want this to be a pure yellow. And I'm going to use that just kind of full strength. I want it to be quite thick. And I'm going to paint the rays on the sun yellow. And I feel like one of these kind of bled over. So if something like that happens, you can usually lift off the paint by just taking a paper towel like I just did and blotting it. Okay, so now again, kind of take a step back, and I think another thing that I would like to do is add some more green to the leaves. So I'm going to go ahead and get some full strength green here. Maybe just add a hint of more green to these leaves. So now I've got like 3 layers of very light, a medium, and then this dark. So all of what I talk about is in the description of the video here. So I usually put some information about the supplies I'm using if you have questions about that. And I also put information about the journal sign up. It's totally free. And I've started doing a once a month free watercolor painting class where we paint these whimsical birds. So if you're interested in that, even if you've come before, you're welcome to come again. That's fun, and again, links will be in the descriptions. All right, so I think one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make these hearts a little bit darker also, because I feel like the purple ones are darker, so I'm going to add just a touch of darker coral to these hearts. And this is why I always say just kind of take a step back, see if there's anything that you kind of just use your intuition. Like, does it need something? Is there something that feels maybe a little out of balance, or something where I want to add something more? And that you just will develop with time, with your intuition. And I like that better. All right, so we are done with the painting part of this project. And the next thing is to just make sure that your paints are really super dry. And we're going to do what I call watercolor sketching. And I just feel like the sun needs to be smoothed out just a hair. And watercolor sketching is just using the black permanent markers to kind of do some outlining. Now, if you like the way that yours looks now and you don't want to do that, totally fine. But I feel like it really adds, I don't know, it just adds a lot of detail. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So for this, it's good to just kind of move everything out of the way. I've moved my water, my paint palette, everything out of the way. I'm going to start with this 0.5 micron permanent ink pen. And I think pretty much everything is pretty dry. It's very warm here today. And I'm working upstairs, so stuff is drying fast. So I'm going to take this pen. I'm just going to start by outlining these hearts very lightly, kind of like with a sketching motion. And this is very forgiving. You don't have to worry about anything being perfect. And I like to outline most of my paintings usually, but sometimes I leave certain areas unpainted. And that, I never really exactly know what I'm going to do with it until I actually start this. And so we'll see how it looks. And I think I'm probably not going to outline the center, those darker areas on the popsicles. And see how, like with these longer lines, I'm just doing this short sketching motion. I don't want like a really dark, heavy line. I want it to look like I drew it. And just because the watercolor paper is rough, it's going to kind of not look super even anyway, and that's how it's supposed to look. And I always say this, that if you're feeling like you want to rotate your paper, just go ahead and do that. I probably would be, except when it's on the camera, I try to keep it still just so that people can see better. And if you go a little bit out of the lines, it's totally fine. It's supposed to look whimsical. And sometimes painting out or drawing outside of the lines is fun. Now, all 6 of these images that I'm working on, the summer collection, not only do they use the same 5 colors, but they're all summery type images that just hopefully will remind you of things that are fun in summer or beautiful in summer. So I'm really looking forward to doing all 6 of them. And this is number 2. Okay. And again, I, as always, kind of take a step back and see, like, is there anywhere I missed? Anything that needs something different? See how it really makes it kind of pop. And I think what I'm going to do, I usually go in with my 005, very fine tip, and sign my work, which I am going to do. But for some reason, I feel like I'm going to add a little bit to these center. And I'm not going to do it very dark at all. I just kind of want to emphasize these indents ever so slightly. Like I said, sometimes I change my mind depending on how things turn out and what I say initially. Sometimes I think I'm going to use the white pen, I don't. Sometimes I think I'm not going to use the white pen, and I do. Oh yeah, I like this better. Again, just kind of using your intuition. And I think a lot of creativity, the reason why people think they're not creative is because they've kind of lost their intuition and how to use their intuition. And I think as children, that comes very naturally to us. And then somewhere along the road, we stop using it because we think somehow it's not right, or we don't trust it, or maybe we made a mistake, or maybe some well-meaning adults tell us something that just gets in our head. And so I really think art helps us go back in time and start to learn how to use our intuition. It can be used in so many beautiful ways. Now, I don't really like this little area, and I'm probably being overly picky about this, but I want to take this red coral again. And this is, I like to try to show, like, I think this isn't really a mistake, but I feel like I went outside the lines just a tad bit too much with that dark black, and I wanted it to be a little bit less. I'm just going to paint over it with a little tiny bit of red. All right, so I think this is done. I like the way it's turned out. I think it's got a lot of charm, this beautiful popsicle picture. And as always, I like to sign my work in the right-hand lower corner, and I just use my initials very lightly. And I always put the year. And I recommend that you do sign your work because it will help you see your progress. It will help you see how things are going. Okay, well, thank you so much for painting with me today, and I hope you enjoyed this project. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you liked it and what kind of memories maybe came back to you, if any. And let me know if you have any other ideas, too, for any other types of tutorials. Okay, have a great rest of your day. Have a great night, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Hey, it's Donna again, and I just wanted to jump in here and let you know that I left out one little detail, not super important, but I did use the white Sharpie marker, and you can see if you look at the image, the finished image, on the upper left corner of each of these popsicles, I just put a little like C, like a little squiggle line. And then on the sun, same thing, a little backwards squiggle line. And so if you want to do that, if you want to add that, it just adds like a little dimension. And if you don't have a white marker or white paint, totally fine. You could just leave it as is. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you again in the next one.